Good morning, everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel, J.E.M.E.D. This morning, we will be jammed up under the theme the weapons may be formed, but they cannot prosper. And we will be looking at Exodus chapter 1. And it reads, These are the names of the sons of Israel who went to Egypt with Jacob, each with his family: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah; Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin; Dan and Naphtali; Gad and Asher. The descendants of Jacob numbered 70 in all. Joseph was already in Egypt. Now Joseph and all his brothers and all that generation died. But the Israelites were exceedingly fruitful. They multiplied greatly, increased in numbers, and became so numerous that the land was filled with them. Then a new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing, came to power in Egypt. Look, he said to the people, the Israelites have become far too numerous for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly with them, or they will become even more numerous. And if war breaks out, we'll join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the country. So we're going to pause here because we see here that the same people who were for the previous king who assisted Egypt are now being frowned upon or seen as a threat. So it's as if what they previously did was forgotten. And as we know, Joseph is the one who was second in command, really the right hand man of the king. He is the one who assisted in this kingdom becoming even more powerful. So even during the time when the famine occurred, he managed everything. And this was actually the hub. Yet, because he died and some of the descendants died, and the king who knew him died, those a few after died, we see that he was no longer remembered. And a lot of the times it is so important to remember where we came from and who have assisted, right? And for that to continue on, because the favor and the blessings that came as a result of that would continue if there is that appreciation and upholding, right? So I do want to make mention of that. Um, let's see what else is happening here. Let's continue with the chapter. And we see here that that king is feeling threatened and not really realizing that the children of Israel were initially not a threat at all. And they literally added value to the kingdom. And so many times we don't even really see who is there to add value and is actually for us versus be a threat. And because we're looking with the naked eye, we see something that's not even there, and we fight against something that does not even require a war. However, let's continue to see what happens, because when we maintain that position, we would see that there would be great loss on our end. So let's look into, well, let's start from verse 11. So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor, and they put Pithom and Ramesses as store cities for Pharaoh. But the more they oppressed, the more the Israelites multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites and worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter and harsh, labor in brick and mortar, and with all kinds of work in the fields. In all their harsh labor, the Egyptians worked them ruthlessly. We're seeing here that at the end of the day, irrespective of the weapon that is used, when the covering, the favor, the blessings of the Lord are upon the lives of his children, the weapons shall not prosper. We see here the Egyptians use that weapon of ruthless labor against the Israelites, mainly because of the fear of the multiplication, and that exact fear, God actually allowed it to be manifested. And he allowed the Israelites to multiply even more. Right? So, exactly what they hoped for with their wickedness, they received the opposite of it. So, irrespective of what we go through and the ills, right, the ruthlessness of other people, the disregard of other people, the wrongful intentions of other people, irrespective of, it is so important to know that we don't fight our battles, and favor comes from our Father. The final say comes from our Father. He is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we could ask or think. And at the end of the day, I'm going to reiterate, the weapon may form, but it cannot prosper. It may look like it's prospering because at the end of the day, the extra labor was put upon the Israelites. But irrespective of that, what they expected, the results, their desire, which was to mitigate, right, the increase of Israelites, that did not prosper. That is exactly what God blessed the Israelites with. So it's important to know who your source is and where your covering, your protection, your blessing, your multiplication is coming from. And it's important to not look at the adversary, but keep your eyes on the one who is able, and the one who will fight your battle, and the one who will cancel the weapons, and the one who will turn the weapon that is fighting against you into the bridge that brings you the fruit and the multiplication. Let's continue with the chapter. We're going to continue with verse 15. Well, from verse 15. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, when you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see that the baby is a boy, kill him. But if it is a girl, let her live. The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. Then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live? The midwife answered, They answered Pharaoh, Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwives arrived. So God was kind to the midwives And the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, He gave them families of their own. Okay, so let's pause here. So we see here when one weapon failed, there was a resort to another weapon. And sometimes when we believe we've gotten victory in one area, we think it's okay and that we can relax and rest because we've won or we see the results of winning above that weapon. But we see here, no, that's not how the enemy operates. Because the enemy seems to have some level of determination to gain the results that he wants. So we see here that the enemy of the Israelites, Pharaoh, when his weapon of increased labor failed, he then looked into the second option that came to him, which was, how can I get the midwives to kill the babies if they're boys? Because at the end of the day, it's the men who went into battle. And what they fed was the, the group from Israelites becoming so mighty that they joined with the Egyptian enemies and fight against the Israelites. So it's the men that was really the threat and the problem in their eyes. We are sometimes a threat and a problem in the eyes of our adversary. Sometimes we don't even know that we're seen as adversaries, and plots are being made against us left, right, and center. And we're going through situations physically, spiritually, emotionally, regardless of what it is. But there is something that we're going through, right? And we don't realize that it is being done because of an adversary who feels threatened. Sometimes our very existence and the relationship that we have with our Father interferes with the kingdom of darkness, or individuals working for the kingdom of darkness, and they cannot fulfill their mandate, their purpose, or their intentions because of our position with our Father, because of our submission to our Father, because of our devotion to our Father. Nonetheless, we have to hold fast, stay the course, and understand who our source is. And again, I would reiterate, understand that we need to keep our eyes on that source, not the weapons that are formed against us. We don't even need to we sometimes don't even need to know who the adversary is. What we need to focus on is who our Father is, what He has promised, the fact that it will come to pass. Also, the fact that the weapons will not prosper, because that's also something He promised, right? And the fact that we have blessings in abundance and He fights our battles for us. So we remain in obedience and we remain steadfast. This is the expectation from us. We stay prayed up, we stay submitted, we stay in obedience, we stay focused. Because we see here, even when the midwives were used, an impossible situation at that time, one would think, okay, the midwives fed Pharaoh, they worked for Pharaoh, they received the commands from Pharaoh. So the likelihood is they would be obedient to Pharaoh. But when we live how we need to, it emanates from us, and it also allows others to see the Father that we serve. And when they're able to see it, a lot of the times there is a possibility of they themselves desiring that relationship, of they themselves desiring to serve the ultimate King of all kings and Lord of all lords. Over and over, I would hear of ex-Satanists say that it is only when they would have gotten to a believer where they had no power over, then they would realize that who they serve was the weaker God. And this would ignite a desire for them to move to the other side and serve the greater Father, the greater King, the greater God. And that is Jehovah. And that is Yahweh. That is Yahweh, his son, Yeshua, Yahayashua, Jesus. Choose ye this day whom you may serve. We don't understand the authority and the power and the victory we have as believers. We don't understand the favor, the protection, the guidance, the provision this Bible gives to us. We don't understand that when we're in relationship with our Father, drawing near to Him, He draws near to us. We don't understand that He says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay, not might, He will. The Father is seeking people that would worship Him in spirit and in truth. And as we do that, taking care of what He desires, His concerns, His business, He shall take care of ours. Now, to take care of His business, we need to know what He wants and what He desires. And may He put our enemies to shame. And at the end of the day, it's not something to gloat over, but it's something to testify about. Because we overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So I am so grateful for the testimony of the Israelites that when the war was put against them, when that weapon was fashioned against them with increased labor, that didn't prosper. And what ended up happening is that God multiplied that blessing that they had, that strength that they had. So one would think that with such rigorous labor, that your body would be beat down and tired. And that is expected. That is normal. But when the supernatural meets with natural, so Father, we expect greatness, we expect glory, and we expect a testimony that it is only the hand of God. And we see here that this is what happened with the Israelites. When their body should have been broken, beat up, and tired, they gave birth with vigor. There was multiplication. And when individuals were sent against them to kill that blessing that the enemy was trying to take from them, those same individuals flipped on who instructed them, and they themselves came to the acknowledgement of the God that the Israelites served. The biggest defeat for the enemy is those who are sent against us, seeing the hand of God over our lives, and then choosing to serve that same God and be a blessing in our lives. Because the midwives became a blessing. They did not kill any of the children, they gave Pharaoh an excuse instead. So they became that bridge that assisted with the fruitfulness of the Israelites. So may your enemies who are trying, right, to cut off what the Lord has planted and what the Lord has purposed now be the bridge for its multiplication. And we're going to look at the very last verse, I believe. Or just before we do, we see here that even when the enemies, or when those who sent, right, to shorten or cut off or kill the blessing of the Israelites, which is the male children, the women were blessings as well, but the threats were the males, right? So at the end of the day, if any type of war was to have occurred, it would have been with the men. So the men were a blessing in that regard, in terms of being able to fight. So we see that when the ones who were sent to destroy ended up being a bridge to allow for building, growth, or multiplication, when they did that, they were blessed. So even when our enemies themselves seek to destroy us, understand that our Father genuinely desires that they turn away from their wicked ways and come to know Him, whom to know is life eternal. And as they do that, as they go in obedience, and as they serve as a blessing to His children, right? When that happens, they themselves partake in the blessing, and the same blessing. So the same blessing that fell upon the Israelites, where they multiplied in numbers, the midwives were expected to kill the children, the male children, got that blessing of having the families, of having the children. So they participated. So at the end of the day, it's really not our fight, to be honest. Those who participate in being a blessing in our lives receive the blessing that was actually in store for us. And those who don't, the Father fights against them. The word did say, your enemies shall be my enemies. Those who are an enemy to you become an enemy to your Father. And He does things in His own time. After all, He is the greatest judge. There is no judge beyond that judge. No one who can serve justice as well as He serves justice. So may we keep that in mind. And the last verse says, then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people, every Hebrew boy that is born, you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live. So now, another weapon. And we're seeing here over and over, he is taken away. But now that this new weapon is formed, we will read the next chapter tomorrow and see how that weapon would also be defeated. Because at the end of the day, one person has the final say. And that's our King of all kings. None can be compared to Him. So it's not even reasonable to say that, okay, maybe the enemy would fight God, but cannot conquer. The enemy cannot even fight God. To be honest, like he's just incomparable. Like that's just it. Nothing and no one can be compared to him. And when we understand that God that we serve, and I'm speaking to myself too, when we understand that, it takes us to another place. It takes our minds to another place. It takes our faith to another level. So I pray that even as we go throughout the day, that we remain steadfast, we remain believing, knowing that all things work together for good to those that love the Lord. And knowing that though the weapons may be formed and we may see it, may we not lose heart. May we believe that it cannot prosper. So it's only for so long. And may we excitedly look forward to our victory. So I would like to thank you for being gemmed up, J Empowerment Early Morning Empowering Devotion. Thank you for being gemmed up with me, Janelle. And I wish you a prosperous, victorious, enemy weapon killing and day.